your void, and I gotta lose some weight. As I have mentioned before on my channel, I think it was in my March TBR where I first mentioned it, I'm moving house! And everyone knows moving with a bunch of books is kind of an undertaking, so you want to get rid of your books beforehand. So that is exactly what we will be doing today. Today is going to be biggest unhaul I have ever done. I very rarely just unhaul a bunch of books. Every now and then I just take one book to like a free little library or something. But I have been culling, and I've been culling good. And I actually think I have one or two heartbreaks in here as well, so I will not go into too much detail of what these books are about. I'm just going to give you a itty bitty tiny reason why I'm unhauling these books. And just so you know, I'm not hating you for liking these books, and please don't hate me for not liking these books. It's an opinion, and I have it. Everyone is entitled to have their opinion, right? Okay, cool. The first two books I will be unhauling is Skullduggery Pleasant 1 and 2 by Derek Landy, because I picked these up too late to really 100% enjoy them. They were fine, they were funny enough, but they are just not worth the time investment. Like, there are a million books in this series, and it's... yes, it's funny for a short while, but I don't think I can read 10,000 books with the same kind of humor in them, and yeah. I liked it for what it was. I don't need it anymore. I grew out of it. Cool, thank you. Next up are the Medici books 1 and 4. I found these in a free little library, that is why book 2 and 3 are missing. These are by Matteo Strucul. I don't know. My camera is just completely abandoning me right now. Hi, welcome back. The Medici 1 and 4, because I found them in a free little library. So there is no book 2 and 3 for me. I tried to read book 1 and I gave up after like 60 pages because this reads way more like a very, very dry history school book. My camera is still sinking. Stop moving. All good things come in threes. Take 3 for this one. I am going to DNF the Medici book 1 and book 4 by Matteo Strucul. I found these in a free little library, that is why book 2 and 3 are missing, and I know why they landed in that free little library. Because instead of being a romanticized version of the life of the Medici in different generations and what they are all doing, this feels like the driest history book I have ever read. And I read a lot of history books because that is actually a thing I like to read. These? Nah. I DNF'd the first book after like 60 pages, and I do not wish to go back to these and try them again. It's just very dry, and if you want to have a romanticized version of the Medici that gives you some information about the family, just watch the BBC show about it. That was actually good. The next one is also a DNF that I DNF'd after a single step into the pool of its depths. It's Mind Reader by Ian Levison. This one follows a cop, and he is extremely racist, homophobic, and sexist, and like, you can play white man bingo with the main character in this one, and I'm just not interested in reading the perspective of a white policeman that thinks he is the victim of racism. Thank you, but no thank you. The next book I have mentioned in my Things to Leave Behind in 2024 video, and that is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. I love the Grishaverse. I love the Grishaverse. I love the Six of Crow duology. I love the first original Grisha trilogy about King of Scars. But Ninth House just didn't do it for me. This book made me feel dumb. I felt that I had to go study at Yale to understand parts of this book, not because it's so complicated, but because it is, I don't want to call it pretentious, but it comes across kind of pretentious. And this book made me feel dumb, so I just don't want to continue with this series, and yeah. I like the cover, so it's sad to see it go, but I don't have room for that in my boxes when I'm moving. The next one is Malice by John Gwynne. Specifically the German edition, because I now have all 4 books of this series in English. so I don't see the need to have a 800-page version of book 1 on my shelf in a different language, especially when I'm not trying to collect the whole series in German as well, because these are actually kind of expensive. So this is a doorstopper and a half that I can just get rid of, that can find a new beautiful home with someone else, because I don't need it anymore. Then we have Shadowborn by Melanie Lane. I thought the cover was interesting. I saw this in a free little library and I thought the cover's interesting and the plot sounded somewhat interesting, so I picked it up. But this is a YA romance, I think, and I just don't think I will pick this up anytime soon. Also, this has some voodoo elements to it, and I'm always a bit when it comes to that, because that is if you don't know, that is a closed cultural practice. You can't just go and pretend you know what you're doing when you do voodoo, because no, it's not your place to do that unless you are part of the culture. And this is from a German author, and I don't know if Melanie Lane has the background to deal with voodoo in a respectful way. So all of these things combined, this book will go back to somewhere else that is not my shelves. Next up, Gracelyn by Kristen Kishore. I tried to read this not too long ago, and I made it a good chunk into it, but I DNF'd it because it's just not my vibe. I don't even know what was wrong with it. It was just incredibly boring, and it feels a bit like the younger end of YA. I like the idea, but I was just so incredibly bored that I DNF'd it, and yeah, why keep the DNFs around, right? Am I stupid or are we syncing again? Oh my god. I'm just gonna sync with my camera now. Okay, cool. Next up is Runebinder by Alex R. Kaler. Little backstory on this one. This is the first gay fantasy book I ever picked up. This is the beginning of me reading queer fantasy books, and my uninformed little butt just Googled queer fantasy, and this showed up, and I picked it up, and it was okay, I guess, but it's incredibly depressing. This is the main character is very depressed, and it shows, and it kind of makes you depressed while reading, and it is a lot less gayer than I wanted it to be. That is what I remember, and a lot less fantasy than I remember what I wanted it to be. It was very much not what I wanted it to be. It was still a solid read, but you know. And at this point, it has been forever, and I have found my way into queer fantasy, and I'm just not gonna pick this back up. I just know I'm not going to pick this back up. If you want dystopian fantasy with queer characters, maybe you want to give it a try, but it is definitely not something that I would go back to finish. Then we have The Pawnbroker by Stuart G. Yates, a book that I desperately wanted to like, not just because of the cover, but I mean the cover is kind of cool. But the premise is also very promising, with like a dual timeline situation, and it did not deliver at all. This was 200 and something, no, longer. Yeah, this is like 300 pages of I don't know how to do pacing, and the premise was good, and the story didn't deliver, and the finale was such a letdown. This is just no. This is one of those books that I just kept on reading because I hoped it would go somewhere, but it never did. Then we have another old one. This is I think the original cover of this book. That is Rhapsodic by Laura Thalassa. I picked this book up when I thought fae romances might be a thing for me. Now I know better. Now I know I don't like fae romances. And this is another one of those things. It was like a solid read, but I have grown up since then in a direction that is just never going to bring me back to this. It's not a bad read, it's just not wowing me enough to keep around. Going back up again! Let's see how long it lasts. Probably not long. Next up, Haunting Adeline by H.D. Colton. 500 pages of repetition and just no. I was a victim of the hype, which is doubly sad because I resisted this hype for a very long time, thinking, ugh, it's so overhyped, how good can it really be? Then I picked it up and I was excited to read it, and then I read it and I was incredibly disappointed. It's just not worth it. I don't know why people are hating on it. I think it's just a trend to hate on it. It's like, if you read a dark romance and like the premise gives you all the details with like the stalking and and shit. This book is exactly what it promises you to be, so I don't get why people love to hate on it so much. It's just incredibly underwhelming. I think people should highlight how underwhelming it is and not how bad, because it's not bad, it's just not good either. It's just very boring, and I think over 500. Oh my god, this is almost 600 pages. 600 pages is way too much book for this book. We are sinking again, Captain. Next is Nocturna by Maya Montagne. This is another one where I get rid of the German edition because the German publisher doesn't intend to publish the second or the third book, I think, because it has been years at this point, and books 2 and 3 are out in English, so they're also for years, so there is no reason that the second book is not out yet, other than the German publisher did not sell book 1 enough to warrant picking up book 2 and 3, maybe? I don't know. So I will get rid of my German edition and I will pick up the English version of it, because I actually very much enjoyed this, because this is a darker shade of magic, but make it Latin American. It was really good. I like this one. This was a really good read. I'm just getting rid of the German edition to get a matching set of the English editions. Speaking of getting rid of German editions, Crave by J.L. Ward. I was a big fan of the Black Dagger Brotherhood in my teenage years because of my aunt. She lovingly referred to them as the porn vampire books. I had a porn vampire phase, don't at me. And I loved them, and I had to wait for the next Black Dagger Brotherhood books to come out, but in the meantime J.L. Ward published a series with fallen angels in them, so fuck yeah, I love me some good fallen angel stories. I love me some angel stories. And I picked this series up. This is book 2, because book 1 I lent out to a classmate in high school, and she never gave it back to me, so I'm now stuck with book 2, and I never got around to picking up book 3, 4, 5, or 6 before they went out of print. But, and it's a big but, I now have all 6 as an ebook. I picked them up as ebooks, so I don't need the lonely book 2 of a series I literally cannot buy anymore on my shelves. And as you can see, it's not small. It's taking up quite some space with its over 500 pages. So that is some space I need in my boxes and can use on my shelves. So, yeet. The next 2 books I'm getting rid of are 2 fantasy books that just didn't wow me enough to warrant sticking around on my shelves, and that is Soulkeeper by David Dalglish and The Pariah by Anthony Ryan. These books were incredibly mid. This one was so mid that I forgot everything that happened in the book, and I just don't feel like picking up book 2 or 3, so why keep book 1 around? Same goes for Soulkeeper. I love the world building in here. The world building was amazing, but the characters were just incredibly underwhelming. I didn't care about any of the characters besides the the bad guy in this. He was kind of cool, but I just know that he's not going to show up in the next couple of books. So again, why bother keeping book 1 around when I am not looking forward to book 2 or 3? So these 2, yeet. We are really playing around with camera angles in this video. The next book I'm going to yeet is City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty, because this is a 700-page chonker, and only 100 pages of this was interesting. And what do you mean? All of the romance happens off page. No thank you. I tried, and without the audiobook I would have DNF'd after page 250, the latest. Maybe even earlier. And we have Legendborn by Tracy Dion. Another one of those books I really wanted to like, but oh my god, it's so boring. It is so boring, and the tone shifts in here. There are a lot of things where just from one second to another something happens, something shifts in a scene without it ever being paragraphed, and it felt like very sudden, and at times it felt like clunky writing. Actually, I was jump scared by a love story in here. That shouldn't be happening. And I have been informed that if I don't like book 1, I probably won't like book 2. And I know a bunch of people are excited because book 3 is happening like right around when I'm filming this. I just can't be bothered. Usually I like me a good King Arthur retelling, but this is not it. Then we have Evermore by Alison Noel. This one is a book that comes from my Twilight era of reading. You know, where you have like the immortal teenager who finds an extraordinary other teenager in high school and they fall in love and then they both become immortal, that kind of storyline. This is basically Twilight, but instead of vampires, they are alchemists.
Alchemists!
Even the potion they have to drink to stay alive looks like blood. I love this series. I know I love this series. I remember that I really love this series. But again, I lent out book 2 to someone and I never got it back. And I remember being incredibly bored by book 3, and I think we never picked up book 4 in this household. And only book 1 survived. I don't know where book 3 went. Maybe I lent that out to the same person that never gave me back book 2. I don't know. But I think I grew out of this one as well. So I will get rid of this and hope that some other person can pick it up. I distinctly remember this being a better version of Twilight. So maybe some lucky teenager finds this and can be spared the Twilight curse. I don't know. Next up, I'm going to unhaul a whole author, which is Audrey Carlin. I am unhauling Calendar Girl Book 1 and the first 3 books in the Trinity quadrilogy? Quintology? I don't know, it's 5 books. And I'm DNFing this because I'm not that kind of romance reader anymore. These books, I picked these romance books up in a time where I thought I was straight and cisgender, and it shows. There's nothing wrong with this one. This was a solid read, but I distinctly remember in, I think, the first part, because this is basically like 3 different romance stories in one book, but we follow like one character. I distinctly remember the first part of this book described like my dream man, and I specifically went in recently to read the description of this guy again, like from a character and from a look standpoint, and I'm like, oh boy, I had no taste. I had 0 taste. So I don't think I would enjoy rereading this or any of the other books. I never picked up book 2, 3, or 4, so and the Trinity books, they follow a woman who comes from a severe domestic violence background, and she starts dating a billionaire who has a tendency to punch walls, throw objects, and punch people when he gets angry. It is framed as him protecting her, but the red flags are screaming at me. And yeah, again, I'm not into this kind of romance anymore. It's not even like, this is not framed as dark romance anyway, so it's just And I remember the books got worse over time. Like book 1 was solid, book 2 was meh, and book 3 was just a letdown. And then book 4 and 5 in this series follow her friends. Again, I'm just not that kind of straight anymore. I have better taste now. That's the delusion I'm living with. This is going to piss a bunch of people off, because I am going to DNF Pierce Brown. I have the Red Rising trilogy and I have the first 2 books in the second trilogy, and I'm going to DNF this whole author for various reasons. First and foremost, Red Rising was incredibly boring. Golden Sun was boring until the ending happened. It was a brilliant ending, I give him that. And I actually had fun with Morning Star, and I never touched Iron Gold and Dark Age, because before I could get to these, something in the world happened, and this author turned out to be a piece of shit. A Zionistic piece of shit, to be exact. So I will ban Pierce Brown from my shelves, once and for all. Don't care enough about his books to excuse his behavior, never mind that it's not excusable. So, yeah. Yeet it is! I will also be getting rid of Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi. Again, a combination of reasons. Reason number 1, these were just extremely boring. Or rather, the first book was extremely boring. I have not read book 2. This is your stereotypical YA adventure romance, but the plot is way too convenient. Like, certain plot points, certain tension points are resolved way too quickly, and certain things are happening way too conveniently because we have to have them happen. Second reason, it's a YA book that reads on the younger side of YA, and that is just not something I vibe with. Third reason, apparently this author is misrepresenting the culture she is trying to depict. I have seen a bunch of videos that explain the issues with the representation of the mythology and culture in here from people who are way more educated about the culture that is represented in these books. Some benchmarks I remember on top of my head is the fact that in the, I think it was Yoruba, I could be wrong, but the culture these books depict are based on a real world culture, and in the language of that culture, the letter Z doesn't exist, but the main character's name starts with a Z. That is one of those marks. Then at some point they are making a specific kind of food, and the way they prepare the food is apparently completely wrong, and also the magic system and the religion is completely misrepresented, and apparently the author is also kind of shitty, as in she had a little author internet beef with Nora Roberts of all people for the title of her book, and I don't think that's cool behavior. And I know there's a movie coming out based on Children of Blood and Bone, and it was apparently an open casting call for people from this culture, only for the author to then announce the cast, and all of the actors are like big business names, but none of them have any connection to the original culture, which the open casting call was for. Like, it's not the author is like the shittiest person in the world, but it's enough for me to be like, I didn't enjoy the book in the first place that much, so why keep them around? And then I'm also going to get rid of my German copies of Spellslinger and Shadow Black by Sebastian de Castell. Again, I'm only getting rid of the German editions because apparently the German publisher decided not to pick up book 3 until the end. So why bother keeping these on my shelves when I can just get the whole set in English? So yeah. I will also be saving a bunch of money on that because they are only available as hardcovers in Germany, and German hardcovers are like the most expensive kind of book you can buy. So getting these in paperback in English is saving me a bunch of money. But I actually really enjoyed these, so I would love to continue the series. Another book I will be getting rid of is a middle grade that I picked up in, again, another free little library, which is kind of sad because this is actually by a German author, so I would like to keep this around, but I'm not going to pick up a middle grade anytime soon. The Last Raven of the Empire is also going to leave my shelf and maybe make someone else happier than me about having this book on the shelf. I need this space. And that's it. That's all the books I am going to not take with me into my new living quarters. Good job, brain. I hope some of these can find a new home. Like, none of these I really outright hate, except like one. This one. No one needs to read this one. No one needs to read that one. So yeah, let me know if you have read any of these, if you share the tiny piece of opinion I've shared with you why I'm getting rid of all these books, and if you don't have anything to say, leave a fire emoji down in the comments, and yeah, I guess I will see you in the next video. Bye!